Hello all and welcome back to my channel. 2 years ago, me and two of my friends went on a simple road trip from Baghdad to Assyria, and we ended up at the site of the ancient city of Uruk. It wasn't meant to be a documentary, we just took some casual shots as a memory. Recently I looked back at those photos and thought, why not share them? A lot of people don't really know the true story of Uruk, or what it actually looks like today. The video doesn't have any voiceover, but the real documentation is in the story I'm going to tell, about Uruk, about Gilgamesh, from the perspective of regular people who saw something incredible and wanted to share it. In the city of Uruk, more than 4,000 years ago, there was a king named Gilgamesh. He was no ordinary king. It was said he was 2/3 god and 1/3 human. Tall, muscular, and powerful to a degree no one could match. He ruled his city with an iron fist, building walls, forcing men into hard labor, and taking women without consent. He listened to no advice and was bound by no law until the people of Uruk could no longer bear his presence. They raised their pleas to the gods, asking them to put an end to his tyranny. His arrogance became legendary. His voice alone could silence a crowd, and his name inspired both awe and fear. The gods responded. But they did not choose to punish him. Instead, they sought to balance his power. They decided to create someone equal to him, called Enkidu. The gods formed him from clay and made him live in the wild among the animals. His body was covered in hair. He knew no language, no cities, and no people. He was closer to beasts than to humans. He lived with gazelles, drank from rivers, and lived unrestrained. His senses were sharpened by nature itself. He could outrun deer, hear whispers across valleys, and feel storms coming before the wind changed. But the gods wanted Enkidu to enter the world of men so he could confront Gilgamesh. They sent him a woman named Shamhat, a priestess of love and the body. She approached him, seduced him, and stayed with him for 6 days and 7 nights. After that encounter, he was no longer the same. When he approached the animals, they rejected him and fled. Then Enkidu understood that he was no longer one of them. He had become human, and he wanted to know who humans were. Shamhat took him to the city, introduced him to cooked food, clothing, and wine. He began to change. With every bite and every sip, he shed the wilderness and stepped into consciousness. Enkidu arrived in Uruk and heard that Gilgamesh was about to take a bride on her wedding night, as he always did. Enkidu stood in his way and stopped him. They fought in the city center. It was a violent battle. Doors shattered, the ground shook. But neither won. They were equally strong. After the fight, they looked at each other. A deep friendship was born, as if they had known each other since birth. Enkidu became the closest person to Gilgamesh. From that moment on, the king changed. He was no longer a tyrant. For the first time, Gilgamesh saw his reflection, not in water, but in a man who could stand his equal. Gilgamesh wanted to immortalize his name. He proposed a great adventure to Enkidu, to travel to the cedar forest, where the monster Humbaba lived, servant of the god Enlil, who guarded the sacred forest. Despite the priest's warnings and the fact the forest lay beyond human boundaries, the two insisted on going. They prepared their weapons, bid farewell to the city, and set off. Their mission was madness to many, but to them it was destiny. The journey was long. They crossed mountains and valleys. When they reached the forest, Enkidu was afraid. He knew Humbaba, having lived in the wilderness, and understood how terrifying the creature was. But Gilgamesh reassured him and said their names would live on through this feat. They didn't walk as heroes, they walked as men who chose to face the unknown. They faced Humbaba, who emerged angrily, shaking the trees with his voice. They fought him fiercely and brought him down. Humbaba pleaded with them, asked for mercy, but Enkidu urged Gilgamesh to kill him. So, Humbaba was slain, and they cut down the cedar trees to bring them back to Uruk. The sound of Humbaba's fall echoed through the ages, a god's guardian defeated by mortal hands. But their actions displeased the gods. They had killed a sacred being and cut down a forbidden forest. When Gilgamesh returned to Uruk, the goddess Ishtar fell in love with him and asked him to marry her. He refused and mocked her, reminding her of the men she had destroyed before. Ishtar grew furious, ascended to the heavens, and asked her father, the god Anu, to send down the bull of heaven to punish Gilgamesh. His defiance of a goddess sealed the wrath of the skies. The bull of heaven descended and struck the ground, opening chasms that swallowed hundreds of men. But Gilgamesh and Enkidu fought it and killed it. When the people celebrated, Enkidu climbed atop the bull's body and threw a piece of its flesh in Ishtar's face. Their victory was not just survival, it was a message to the divine. Man will not kneel easily. The gods gathered. They said this defiance had gone too far. They decided that one of the two must be punished. The choice fell on Enkidu. Enkidu became ill. He lay in bed for many days, hallucinating, seeing nightmares of the underworld. Gilgamesh sat by his side, helpless. He watched his friend weaken day by day. Eventually, Enkidu died. The strongest man in Uruk wept like a child. His grief shook the pillars of the palace. Gilgamesh was devastated. He shouted at the gods and wept for his friend. He couldn't believe he was dead. He refused to bury the body and stayed beside it for days. Then he went out into the wild, in torn clothes and unkempt hair, searching for a single answer: how to escape death. His footsteps marked the sand with despair, his eyes searching the horizon for eternity. He heard of a man named Utnapishtim, the only one whom the gods had granted immortality after the great flood. So, he decided to find him and learn the secret. He journeyed far. Through deserts, he met strange creatures. He reached Mount Mashu, guarded by scorpion beings. They let him pass, and he traveled through a long, dark tunnel until he reached the Garden of the Gods, where trees were made of gemstones. It was a realm beyond human dreams, where the earth glittered like stars. Then he met a tavern keeper named Siduri, who tried to convince him to enjoy his life and accept human fate. But he insisted on reaching Utnapishtim. She directed him to a man named Urshanabi, who sailed him across the Great Sea. After much hardship, Gilgamesh arrived at Utnapishtim's place and asked him, "How did you gain immortality?" Utnapishtim told him the story of the flood, how the gods ordered him to build a ship and place in it two of every creature, how the flood destroyed the earth and drowned all people. After surviving, the gods rewarded him and his wife with immortality. He was the last whisper of a world washed away. He said, "But what happened to me won't happen again. Immortality is not for another man." Yet he gave Gilgamesh a test. "If you can stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights, I will show you something." Gilgamesh sat down, but soon fell asleep. When he awoke, a week had passed. Even the strongest flesh bows to time. Utnapishtim decided to grant him a gift. He said, "Under the water, there is a plant that restores youth. Take it and return to Uruk." Gilgamesh dove and took the plant, joyful. But on the way back, while bathing, a serpent came out, took the plant, and disappeared. He was left without hope. The symbol of renewal was taken by the serpent. Life returns to the cycle, again and again. Gilgamesh returned to Uruk, broken. But when he stood on the city's walls and looked at the towers and temples, he realized something. He realized that man does not live forever in body, But through his deeds, through what he builds, through what he leaves behind, he wrote his story on tablets. And so, the tale remained for thousands of years. This is the Epic of Gilgamesh, a story of friendship, pride, tragedy, and a journey in search of the meaning of life and death. The oldest story written by humankind and still read today.